On this episode of Unanswered Questions, we're getting ready to consume some information because we're checking out the film They Live, and also the locations that the film was shot at, including this one where Nada first walked into town. And I've tried to watch this film and answer these questions before, but they just weren't coming to me. So maybe I just wasn't looking the right way. Oh, and by the way, to my viewers out there that don't like when my videos talk about politics, there's no way to talk about this movie without discussing politics. So prepare for things to get very political. It's just impossible to not. And let's face it, it's not that you don't like when I talk about politics, it's kind of more that you don't like when I talk about politics that you don't agree with.
Question number 1.
Is They Live based on anything?
While the story seems like an entirely original concept, it is actually based on a short story called 8 O'Clock in the Morning by Ray Nelson. It first appeared back in 1963 in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, but apparently Carpenter first discovered the story when it was adapted into comic book form with the Eclipse Comics anthology series Alien Encounters, with a story entitled Nada. There's differences between the 3 versions of the story, with the original printed version giving the backstory on how Nada could see the aliens, here called the Fascinators, what with hearing a signal to awake while watching a hypnotist act. The comic adaptation didn't say how our protagonist gained the ability to see, but the film version was the only one to include the plot device of the sunglasses. The depictions of the aliens is also a little more elaborate, with them having a far less humanoid form and instead looking like something a touch more Lovecraftian. All forms of the story involve storming a TV station in order to stop the signal though, and the main comic gives us the inspiration for the final shot of the film with a woman in bed with one of the Fascinators. Both printed versions are much shorter, much darker affairs, and are a lot more restrained with the subtext, although quite a bit of the film imagery is evident, so they're both worth checking out to see the evolution of the concept. Question number 2.
We're here right now at the spot where Nada encounters the blind street preacher for the first time to ask the question, is Nada married?
Virtually nothing is known about the background of Roddy Piper's lead character, and it's evident in his name. He's Nada. Nothing. A sort of a blank slate to build the story off of. What we do know is that he's a drifter, moving from place to place and working whatever jobs come along. We learn that he ran away from home a long time ago because of his situation with an abusive father, and that he worked construction in Denver, so he's not an LA native, and that's pretty much it. He doesn't seem to have any sort of family or family links, but anytime that we see his hand, he's very clearly wearing a wedding ring. So, is he married? The actual story behind him wearing the ring is that Piper was married in real life and refused to take off the ring during filming, so they just went ahead and let him wear it. It's never mentioned, so it's really not important to the plot, but there's no reason for it not to be relevant from a film standpoint. Again, we know very little about the character except that he left home really young and used to live in Denver. I mean, he's clearly not young anymore, so there's quite a bit of time in there to account for. I'd also note that he seems to be pretty broken, closed off, hinting at a pretty dark background, one that might even go further than a jerky, abusive dad. Perhaps he was married once, and that marriage is now over, with him choosing to continue wearing the ring. Nada being a widower would fit in with his having a tragic backstory and being a little shut down emotionally, adding to his gruff personality. This could also be why his character doesn't really shun the notion of fighting to the death as the film draws to a close. He's not really afraid to die if he has someone to look forward to being with. I know that it's not really an intentional character bit, and that it's just a shooting quirk that they had to deal with, but it does accidentally create a hidden backstory for Nada that we didn't really have before. Question number 3.
Behind me is a spot where the church used to be, where the resistance met, and it is now gone, and you can see there's now a school there in its place. And we are going to ask the question here, what is the aliens' master plan?
Unlike other invasion movies where the aliens would take over by force, these ones are more subtle, preferring to take a more subversive mode of attack. Instead of using weaponry, they basically hypnotize the entire human race to not notice them there, gaining political and financial power along the way. It's said that their intentions are to eliminate the middle class, creating a poor nation of slave labor that they can simply use at their leisure, and it would appear that during the time the film happens, they're pretty close to achieving their goal. It's likely that this race doesn't exactly have great weaponry when it comes to an offensive assault, so they took this route, which was clearly successful. Their method obviously takes longer for them to achieve their goals than just coming in and blasting away, but considering that other films featuring aliens that use that tactic generally end with them losing, whereas this invasion is close to the end, it seems like they chose the better method. The real master plan doesn't come into play until the Resistance's meeting at the end, though, where they state that the carbon emissions have been increasing for a while, indicating that it's the fault of the aliens. Knowing this, it's possible that they're terraforming Earth intentionally in order to create a more hospitable atmosphere, but it's also likely that they're just straight up destroying and taking advantage of our planet's resources, using them up. It's clear from the end that they're not stuck here on the planet and they can travel to and from at any given time, and it seems that their intentions are to stay here, use up as much as they can while living as large as they can, and then when the planet is a hollow shell, just leave and start somewhere else. It's pretty possible that they had already done this to their home planet, since they seem to be pretty ambivalent to anything except their own selfish needs, and instead of simply adjusting their lifestyles, just find new planets to plunder and continue their cycle. Question number 4.
Right behind me is the spot where the obey sign was, one of the first billboards he saw. And we're going to ask the question now, why is everything in black and white?
When Nada finds the sunglasses the Resistance created to block the alien signal, he puts them on and sees the world without their interference. He's able to see the hidden subliminal messages all around us, but is this the way that the world really is? There's a couple of comments about the glasses allowing people to see through the facade the aliens created, and someone at the Resistance meeting claims that
they've colorized it,
which would insinuate that this black and white imagery is the real world. So, there's some mixed signals here. My first inclination is that the messaging isn't truly there, and it's just an underlying subliminal message that people see because of the glasses. My thoughts on this are formed by one scene, and it's the newsstand. You have to assume that the aliens are resistant to the signal and can see things as they are, but then why is this one buying a newspaper? We can see that there are literally like 4 words on his paper in the unfiltered version, but when he pays for the paper, he walks away reading it. I mean, would he really have purchased a newspaper and then pretended to read it as he walked away? This other alien is getting her hair done and has a magazine open for reading, but again, there's no words there beyond their messaging. This one in the store appears to be reading information off of a can, so clearly the aliens can still see the outer imagery, not the subliminals underneath. Now, the problem with this is the ending. After the signal has been negated, we see that the messages underneath have been revealed and that the images on top were part of the signal. This indicates that there's something really off with the aliens' perception. Even though the outer text is fake and part of the signal, they obviously still see it for some reason. Plus, when the satellite is destroyed and this guy is in the bar watching TV, he doesn't notice that anything is different. He just sits there watching it while everyone around him sees the aliens for what they really are. But they're watching a program that has a very obvious no independent thought sign up. So if the aliens saw the regular image when it was suddenly looking at a sign with the underlying message on it, the aliens should have realized something was up. You kind of have to assume they see each other for how they are all the time, because he didn't freak out seeing 2 of his own kind up on the screen all of a sudden, but the text is inconsistent. So there's 2 ways to go here. The first is that the aliens are faking. In order to blend in with society, they have to fake these menial things as a matter of habit to keep up the illusion. It seems like it would be a tedious task for them to do, and you figure it'd be easier to just, not go to the newsstand. But I guess after so long in power, it's just part of what they do. It's also possible that since they are aliens, that their vision does not work the same way as ours does. It's likely that they're able to see both. Perhaps they can adjust their viewing so that they can see both the outer imagery and the subliminal imagery at will, like putting on glasses to see better. I mean, look at how crazy their eyes are. You have to figure that these goggles here do some cool stuff, right? One thing that absolutely is for sure is that the Resistance guy is wrong. The aliens did not colorize us, and the black and white view is simply part of the glasses blocking the signal. We know this because when the satellite is destroyed and humans are seeing things the way they really are, everything is still in color. If the aliens had colorized us, the end scene would be in black and white, and yet it's not. Question number 5.
Behind me now is the spot where the newsstand used to be, but it's no longer. And here we're going to ask the question, how long have the aliens been here?
The movie doesn't really tell us how long we've been sleeping, but it does give us a little bit of information. We know that they've been in it for the long haul, and their game is the long con, and we have a few hints and assumptions that we can make. One possibility is that they've been here since advertising began, but that would be centuries, and I'm not convinced that they've been here that long, just based on the setup of society over that time frame. Another thought is that they've been here since TV began, utilizing that technology to help spread their message, but I think it's shorter term than that. I think the answer lies in one comment near the end of the film. The pirate TV guy says that the atmosphere and methane and fluorocarbons have been increasing since 1958, which seems to indicate that they've been trying to change elements of our atmosphere since then. An interesting thing about this time frame is that it's around the time that the first satellite launched into space. Sputnik first went up in 1957, so the presence of satellite technology on Earth could help enhance their signal. Oddly enough, the 50s had an increase of government trying to squash those that they saw as counter to their interests, with McCarthyism possibly an early attempt for the aliens to take power and root out subversive elements to their cause. That time frame gives them a few decades of collecting and accumulating power and wealth, slowly building their base, and also allowing them time to drop their guard a bit, enough for the resistance to begin to build. Question number 6.
Here we are in the infamous alleyway where Nada and Frank had their very, very long fight scene, to ask the question, what about those speakers?
So when Nada puts on the glasses, as explained, he can now see all the messages underneath, which makes sense. But what about this? This is a speaker placed on top of a traffic light saying over and over again. Why would a pair of sunglasses affect this? It's not like they have earpieces or anything, so why would sunglasses suddenly allow him to be able to hear a signal that he can't hear without them? It could be that the audio is merely for us, the viewers, and that Nada can't actually hear this, but there's another answer that takes its inspiration from the short story that the movie's based on. This shows us the signal isn't visual, it's hypnotic. It's not a signal based on vision, but a suggestion to our brain, putting us in a trance-like state, like sleeping. The glasses don't just change how you see things, it blocks the signal, which opens all of the senses back to the normal state, including auditory input, allowing him to hear the sleep signal. Question number 7.
Although it looks much different now, this baseball field used to be where the shantytown was, where all the homeless people lived and where Nada took temporary refuge. Obviously quite a bit different now. And here we're going to ask the question, was Buck Flower a plant?
Buck Flower, regular actor in Carpenter's film, is also in this one. He first appears in the encampment, watching TV with the others, making comments about the hackers, and is the one to get up and change the channel, making a disparaging remark towards the pirate signal. We see him a few other times with the others, talking about things he's been hearing on the streets, referring to cults of violence about a dream that they had, and shortly after, they're raided, trying to find the resistance members there, and he's seen with police descending on him. Now, it's important to note that the majority of the film takes place over the course of like 2 days. The morning after the raid, Nada finds the glasses and goes on a rampage, teams up with Frank, and then they hide out. The next morning, Gilbert tells them about the meeting, and everything goes down that evening. That night, infiltrating the aliens, they encounter Flower again, completely cleaned up and in a tux, drinking champagne and mistaking the boys for new recruits. Now, given the time frame and his negative comments in the camp, was he a part of the aliens' plan ahead of time? Was he sent there to find the resistance, and was he the one who actually tipped the police off to their whereabouts? 48 hours seems like a quick turnaround time for a bum on the streets to be this knowledgeable about the behind-the-scenes functions of their operators. The way he talks makes it seem like he's been there for a while. When they go to the cable station talking about the signal, he says, "We pump it out all over the world." He says we, not they, which seems like something someone who had just joined up with a group wouldn't say. He also tries to impress them by saying he knows the guards there, something that seems like a brand new recruit to the conspiracy would not be privy to. Now, it's possible that he could just be faking it in order to impress these guys, but he's a more adept than he should be, even being smart enough to use his transporter watch to get out of Dodge when things go sour, even if he seems a bit rough around the edges. My take is this: I think he's been with the aliens for a while and has been their informant and has been given information necessary to him as a part of their crew, but hadn't had access to the wealth and privilege yet. They likely had given him an assignment, and it was to locate Gilbert's crew, which he was able to do. Him spreading news of violent cults among the other inhabitants there was likely to have them feeling paranoid about this strange group of people who were meeting at the church, and constantly bad-mouthing the pirate signal in order to downplay its seriousness were probably a part of the job. Once the mission was successful and the camp was laid to waste, his role was no longer needed. He was seemingly taken in by the police, but then just simply went on to his promised role of luxury. At the end, he didn't just suddenly become well-groomed and wardrobed. He just dropped his drifter persona, an outfit, accounting for the quick changeover of stylings, but still retains a bit of the street sass that he picked up while undercover. Question number 8.
And behind me is what used to be the hotel that Frank and Nada stayed at, where I will ask the question, are there ghosts involved?
The aliens mostly talk into their wristwatches as communicators, but not this guy, nor these ones. They have this other device that they use to talk to each other, but is that some sort of radio, or is it a freaking PKE meter? Clearly some prop master likes this little thing since it actually shows up in several movies, including Suburban Commando. I don't have any fun theories here or anything. I just thought it was a funny thing to point out. Maybe this does exist in the Ghostbusters universe. Maybe Egon is actually an alien or in cahoots with them. One thing is for sure. Walter Peck sold out to the aliens and clearly has no dick. Question number 9.
Do the human collaborators know about the aliens' true form?
It's revealed that the aliens aren't alone, and they have humans in elite positions helping them out, and they're rewarded with wealth and privilege. The question becomes whether these traitors are in on the illusion or can actually see things outside of the sleep state without using the glasses. Very little information about it is given in the actual film, but I think the obvious inference would be that even though they are clued into the existence and purpose of the aliens, I don't think that they're able to access the world as it really is. Take a look at this store scene and imagine being a human that can see through their signal and have to function in this store. You can't find what you're looking for at all, and all the product is the same. There's no papers, no magazines, and even TV would just have these big dull images plastered everywhere. The obvious solution would be to key the people into your origins, but not reveal the purpose of the signal. I'm sure revealing the tech that they had available, like the watches and the transporter, is enough to convince people what you really are, without also revealing your true appearance. Question number 10.
And right behind me is the famous shot where they had all the billboards in the background seeing the whole city. And here we're going to ask the question, was Holly always bad?
Man, this is a tough question, and I probably change my opinion on it every time that I watch the film, but this time I think I have it. Let's review. Nada first encounters Holly as she's leaving work, presumably the cable station that she works for, and takes her hostage. At her house, she tells him about the aliens and the glasses, but she doesn't believe and knocks him out a window. She then calmly calls someone, possibly the aliens, to say that she's alright, but also possibly just the police, as we see her eyeing up the glasses. Later on, she shows up at the resistance meeting, revealing information about the satellite and signal right before they're broken up by the enemy forces. We then see her again at Cable 54, conveniently appearing out of nowhere and sticking with the guys before double-crossing them and shooting Frank and trying to kill Nada as well. So, based on this, you'd assume that she was bad the whole time, right? She's clearly in on it, what with her job, trying to kill Nada at the house, and trying to ruin their destruction of the satellite at the end, right? But what about the meeting? Here's the thing, if she's evil the whole time, what the hell is she doing at this meeting? She really has no reason to be there if she's on the alien side. She even gives them useful information. The Resistance thinks that the signal is coming from KRDA, where one of them works, but Holly tells them that they're wrong and that it's coming from somewhere else. Granted, she seems to know that it's coming from Cable 54, where she works, and doesn't offer that info immediately, which is suspicious as hell. But then there's the attack, and it almost kills her. Seriously, they begin the assault basically right where she's standing. If her side knows where the meeting is and they're about to launch a full-scale attack, why on earth would she be there? She's just putting herself in harm's way for no reason and giving vital information she doesn't need to give. Her going there and giving them info would be an act of espionage to infiltrate them and get info, but they didn't need their info. They're straight up wiping them out. And having her going in all secret squirrel has no point. Plus, look at her face here. She's completely surprised. Here's what I think. She's in on it, but only to a lesser level at first. I think that she's aware of something going on and someone pulling the strings, and when she puts on the glasses after Nada leaves her place, it really is the first time she's seeing what's really happening. I think that she went into that meeting on her own and was sincere. I just think that when she saw what the outcome was for the side of the Resistance, she realized that it's better and easier to be on the winning side. I think she got a taste of what rebellion gets you in this world, manages to escape, and realizes that she has to put herself squarely on what she thinks is in the winning side.
I don't know, I might change my answer again tomorrow. We'll see.
Question number 11.
Up there on that building is where the Marry and Reproduce sign was featured. And here we're going to ask the question, is the film about a Jewish conspiracy?
So this one's crazy because when I said that, you were thinking, what? That doesn't make any sense at all. Did this guy even watch the movie? I know. I thought the same exact thing when I heard that there was apparently groups of neo-Nazis and white supremacists online claiming that the film was actually a secret anti-Semitic message, and have been since as early as 2008 or so. Here's a thread from the infamous Stormfront message board from November of 2008 claiming that the film is, and I quote, the best pro-white movie ever and depicts perfectly what we are put through today. Then they try to point out that the alien writing looks like Hebrew, and oh my god, I went to this site in order to get you this screenshot, and I gave these idiots traffic to their site, and I'm probably on some sort of watch list now, so just know I'm doing this for you. I'm sure that someone will make some sort of comments down below, because nothing gets more comments than me saying something as basic and simple as Nazis and white supremacists are pretty stupid, but you'd have to be a complete idiot to think that this theory is correct.
Not to mention you have to be a complete idiot to be a Nazi or a white supremacist, but there you go.
Anyway, Carpenter himself saw these theories and had them circulate towards him, which drew his ire. He specifically stated in a tweet from 2017 that They Live is about yuppies and unrestrained capitalism. It has nothing to do with Jewish control of the world, which is a slander and a lie. Plus, if you knew even the slightest thing about Carpenter and the contents of his films, you know that the man's a bleeding heart liberal, and his films are mostly about anti-establishment and inclusion, not to mention a staunch run of doubt about military and police control, which would kind of go up against the neo-Nazis' usual go-go fascist state stance. Question number 12.
Is the film a criticism of consumerism?
The last question contains Carpenter's statement about what the film is about, and it is spot on. But quite a few times when people discuss this film, they bring up consumerism and people's inherent need to buy, similar to the underlying commentary in Romero's Dawn of the Dead. They'll often point to the signs saying consume, and the money saying this is your god in the discussion. But I think that's a little off, because with consumerism, you're basically faulting the consumer. The basic definitions of it are twofold. One, that it's the protection and promotion of the needs of the consumer, and the other is discussing society's preoccupation with buying things. And I don't really think that either one of those things applies here. I mean, first of all, the aliens clearly aren't working in the interest of protecting the consumers here. It's kind of the opposite. They're taking advantage of the needs of the consumers in order to achieve their own ends. Secondly, society isn't preoccupied with buying things here. They're programmed to buy things, and that's a big difference. The average person overconsuming goods, considered a derogatory thing when discussing consumerism, is being told to purchase goods while in a sleep state. They can no more not consume product than they can not marry and reproduce. The average human being here is instead being lulled into a mindless state, focusing on simple pleasures and basic daily needs in order for them to not notice the elite upper class that's taken advantage of them and turned them into cattle. It's a direct parallel to the Reagan-era economics of trickle-down and the disintegration of the middle class, which Carpenter directly states that it is. Recently, he's made statements joking that the film is actually a documentary and that it's in line with what's going on today, with the upper class 1% filling in for the aliens, taking larger and larger chunks of the profit while meting out less and less, replacing yesterday's middle class with the lower class and turning the lower class onto the streets. Question number 13.
We're back in the alleyway to ask that question. Why an 8-minute fight scene?
Probably the most notorious element of the entire film is the fight scene between Nada and Frank in the alley. After Nada goes on a rampage and kills several aliens, he's on the run from the law, considering that to the outside world, he's a mass murderer. When he tries to get his construction buddy Frank on his side, the guy's naturally wary. A crazy man he barely knows has just killed a bunch of people and then walks up to him with a pair of sunglasses. He's bound to take it, with a whole shaker full of salt. So they fight, and it's about 8 minutes long. It goes on forever. The slugfest has been parodied dozens of times, including in South Park, and it's glorious, but why is it even in the movie? Some people hate it, saying it stops the movie dead in its tracks, but those people are crazy, because it's not only is it a joy to watch, but it is a part of the central metaphor of the film. Nada is able to see through the images fed to him. He's awake. Frank is not. But being awake is hard. It's fighting. It's easier to be complacent, to be asleep. The fight is so long because that's how hard the average person fights to not fight. The average person doesn't want to have to face the reality that the world is completely stacked against them. The prices on everything keep going up, yet wages stay stagnant, and it's worse since 1988. Carpenter's film, as he repeatedly states, was his middle finger to Reaganomics and capitalism, and the fight scene is his version of the average citizen's reluctance to fight back against the very system that's holding them down. In fact, fighting back even harder against waking up to realize it. In the end, Nada gets those glasses on him, and Frank sees things for how they really are, and who the real enemies are in this situation. And thankfully, he joins the resistance. I don't think Carpenter was ready to face the reality that in everyday life, Nada probably ends up in that alleyway alone.
So there you have it. It is 13 unanswered questions about a fantastic film that's very layered and very intricate and awesome film. I very much enjoy this film. It's one of my favorite Carpenter flicks. I love it a lot. There's a lot of cool subtext to this, although it's more text than it is subtext. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed these answers and this little trip around the underbelly of LA. And got a kick out of it. I know I had fun doing it, even though I got a little creeped out a couple of times. If you have any other answers or questions that you have about this movie, put them down below. I want to see those. Give me some comments, give me some likes, share this video out to your friends, and check out the Patreon page, because these guys help keep the channel going. You can too by going to patreon.com/movietimelines and helping to support the channel. But you could also just keep on watching the videos, which I thank you for doing, and I'll see you very shortly for another great one. Thanks guys. Bye-bye.